Hello again, students. Welcome to Facilitating Learner-Centered Teaching. And this is me, your teacher, Gabriel Rose Perlin. For the Unit 1, we're going to discuss about the foundations and characteristics of the learner-centered teaching. Some of you are already familiar with what is this learner-centered teaching, but some, these words is still new to them. Now, we're going to discuss what is this all about, and what are the approaches that is under learner-centered teaching. But before that, we're going to define first what is teaching approaches. When you say approach, it's a theoretical position and beliefs about teaching. It's the why in your teaching. Guys, different teacher uses different approach. Okay? It depends kung ano yung paniniwala ng isang teacher. Now, I want to ask you, is an approach, method, and techniques the same? Yes or no? It's a no. These three words, they have different meaning. Sometimes we use these three words, kanang feeling natin, isa lang sila ng meaning, but they are not. An approach is the why in your teaching, while a method is the how in your teaching, or meron siyang sequence na gina-follow. While the techniques is the what in your teaching. Ito yung particular activities that you are using. Again, an approach is your own belief as a teacher, kung ano yung paniniwala mo na mas maganda sa mga students. For example, I'll give you a concrete example para mas maintindihan kung ano ba yung teaching approach, teaching methods, and teaching techniques. Teaching approach, for example, I do believe na children should be the centered in the learning process. So it means that I am using child-centered approach. Kasi yun yung paniniwala ko. That the students should, the interest and the needs of the students should be considered. So I'm using child-centered approach. While some teacher, they think that the subject or the course that they are teaching, the syllabus, they should really follow the syllabus. Like, for example, week 1, ganito yung topic. Dapat within the week 1, maubos talaga yan siya ng teacher na even though walang naintindihan yung students. So, that teacher, that's the belief of that teacher, that particular teacher. So, he's not using child-centered approach. He's using a different approach. And you'll discover it later. Ano yung mga approach na yon. Next, method. Example of that is the deductive and inductive method. Diba? Ang method is your how in teaching. Meron siyang systematic way of doing it. Meron kang step-by-step na sinusunod. When you're using deductive method, you, mag-una ka muna, i-present mo yung facts or theories. Like, magturo ka ng math, hindi mo pwedeng i-let lang ng mga students mo na mag-solve ka agad without explaining it first, right? So, teaching math usually uses deductive method. After presenting the facts, then you'll give examples and then you'll give activities to your students to determine whether they understand your topic or not. So, meron siyang systematic process na sinusunod. That's the teaching method. Now, let's go to teaching techniques. Ito yung how, what, the what in your teaching. Kung ano ba yung particular na strategy na ginawa mo. For example, nagpagawa ka ng narrative report, jingle writing contest, what else? Dramatic symposium, and etc. Creative writing, and many more. So, those specific strategy that you use is called teaching techniques. And also, ibang different topics we are using, in the different topics we are using different techniques. It depends if whether these techniques or strategies is suitable to the learners. So that's it. Let's proceed to this one. Kindly observe these 4 pictures. What can you say about these pictures? Diba? Yung first picture, teacher is writing in the board. Second picture, students are answering in their table. And as you observe, their sitting arrangement is a bit farther from each other. And the third and fourth picture, they're listening to their teacher but they got bored. So, kindly guess what is this approach? Actually, guys, these 4 pictures represents an approach. And this approach is teacher-centered approach. Ito yung first na approach na we'll be tackling. Ano ba itong teacher-centered approach? A teacher-centered approach is perceived to be the only reliable source of information, in contrast to the learner-centered, which is they believe that the learner is also important source of information. But today, where most of the teacher, they're asking their students to give their ideas. It's because they're using learner-centered. While before, teachers are believed to be the only reliable source without asking their students. Actually, guys, we are product of this approach. Diba? Dito tayo yung product na ganitong approach. So, we cannot say na hindi din siya effective. Okay? It's just that, iba na yung generation natin ngayon. Hindi mo na siya pwedeng gamitin this approach alone. So, you can use other approaches. And also, teaching consists in teacher telling and prescribing what learners should do. So, the teacher is dictating to the learners ano ba yung dapat nilang gawin that makes the learner a passive recipient of instruction. Teacher is the sage on the stage. Meaning, sila yung bida sa harap ng klase. So, that's the teacher-centered approach. Next is these 4 pictures. For first pic, it parang nagawonder siya. And then second pic, lesson planning. Third pic, syllabus. Fourth pic, parang naiirita yung students answering the test because he doesn't understand. Okay. So, these 4 pictures represent the next approach, which is the subject matter centered approach. Are you familiar with this subject matter centered approach, or is this your first time hearing about this approach? So, the subject matter gains primacy over the learners. Yung dito na approach, ang teacher, ang gina-consider niya is yung course, yung subject niya. He doesn't care if the students understand what he or she is talking about as long as ma-finish niya yung lesson niya or yung ma-follow niya talaga yung syllabus na binigay sa kanya. There are some teachers that is using this approach. By all means, the teacher finish subject as scheduled even if learners have not learned it. and stick to the core syllabi is priority of the said teacher. He or she doesn't consider whether the learners have learned anything as long as matapos niya lang yung syllabus niya. That's subject matter centered approach. Next. Okay, medyo may dictating din yung teacher. So this approach is teacher-dominated approach. Teacher-dominated approach is different from teacher-centered approach. Kasi sa teacher-centered, we're talking about the information. The teacher is the only reliable source of the information. While teacher-dominated approach, it talks about the authority inside the classroom. The teacher does what he or she planned without necessarily considering the learner's interests, concerns, and situations. In contrast to the learner-centered classroom, the teacher makes adjustments in his or her lesson plans to accommodate the learner's interest and concern. Kasi dito sa teacher-dominated, hindi niya na kinukonsider yung learners niya. As long as siya talaga yung authority sa loob ng classroom. O, gawin mo ito, ganyan, ganito ang gawin natin without asking what the students wants. Okay, so that's the teacher-dominated approach. Next one. Okay, yung first pick, it's a blank slate or tabula rasa ni John Locke. And then, second pick, the teacher is yung nag-pour siya ng water sa mga students. And then, the third pick, it's an ATM machine. Fourth pick, still, connected yan siya sa tabula rasa ni John Locke na it says na yung children, primarily, they don't know anything unless you fill it up. Let's go to the banking approach. I know some of you are not familiar with this because even ako, I just encountered this approach during my review days. So, I'm taking this chance to present to you or to explain to you what is this banking approach so that soon when you review for your board examination, you'll be familiarized with this. Banking approach is when the teacher deposits knowledge into the empty minds of students for students to commit to memory. Yung teacher, nag-believe siya na yung student is wala siyang prior knowledge na kailangan lang daw natin na tayo yung mag-fill in ng mga knowledge sa kanya. And then, students are perceived to be empty receptacles waiting to be filled. These facts that are deposited are withdrawn gradually every time quizzes, tests are given. Until the end of the term, everything is withdrawn in the final exam. The students' minds are once more empty, ready to be filled in the next school year. That's the concept. Actually, somehow, this concept is true. Diba? Nag-study yung mga students kasi they are studying their lesson one day before the exam. They're feeling, yung gina-fill in natin ng information yung mind natin kasi pagkabukas, exam na. And during the exam, all you need to do is to withdraw your knowledge, yung mga gipang study mo. After exam, may naalala ka pa ba? Wala na. Kasi, na-withdraw mo na during the examination. So, that's the concept of banking approach. Nag-deposit ng knowledge yung teacher or nag-deposit ka ng knowledge sa sarili mo. And then, gi-withdraw mo siya during examination or quizzes. And after that, wala na. Wala nang naiwan sa'yo. And then, diba? This is very true. kana after a month, and you'll be asked again the same question that you've answered during your examination, you cannot answer it anymore because you already forgot the concept. So that's banking approach.